How's it going, gringos and aspiring Latinos? We're going to talk today about some of the big language learning apps that are out there. And we're talking about Duolingo, Babbel, and Rosetta Stone. So let's take a look. So let's first take a look at Duolingo. So Duolingo is an app that's been around for a few years now, and it's been helping me fill some of the gaps in when I wasn't necessarily actually learning Spanish. It wasn't until about 3 months ago that I started trying to learn Spanish seriously. But it was the first thing that I went to whenever I decided to kind of start trying to pick it back up again. Okay? Now, if you remember, I haven't spoken Spanish ever, but I only took 2 semesters of classes back in college. That was 12 years ago. I really am very, very basic. So I jumped onto Duolingo in December of 2020, and I was working my way through the Duolingo tree. Now, what's cool about the Duolingo tree is that it is fun. It is gamified. It gives you goals. It gives you things to shoot for and to progress yourself through the process of learning these different levels, learning these different topics, okay? And that's what's great about Duolingo, and one of the pros of it is that it is very fun, it is very topical, and it does give you some base level and beginner vocabulary, which is really, really great, okay? This is why I started with Duolingo, because one, it was free, no need to explain myself there, but also it was fun. It was something to motivate you, and it gave you, streaks, and your goal was to try and keep the streak going. How many days in a row could you actually do Duolingo and continue to progress with it? And, I hit a 30-day streak. I went from December 7th or something like that until January 7th. And I did a 30-day streak, and it was fun. It was great. It was really quite awesome. I loved it. Now, that's kind of the good stuff. There are some cons to Duolingo, right? So you're not going to get conversationally fluent going through the Duolingo tree. Just not going to happen. There's not enough exposure to sentences and not enough exposure to listening practice and listening comprehension and actually having to repeat back or answer questions or things like that. There's no response necessary for you. It's mostly just typing stuff in. You can do some voice stuff, and I would do some voice stuff for sure. But for the most part, it's just typing stuff in and it's learning kind of some of the basic vocabulary. Now, that's a con for me because there's no context with it. And when I don't have some sort of context there, it doesn't stick. It doesn't stay here in my head. So for Duolingo, it's good if you want some of those basics and you want to start getting familiar with the language. And if you're brand new to language learning or brand new to the language that you are aspiring to learn, I think it's great to kind of get you jump started and give you a feel of what the language is like. But it's not going to get you very far. So for me, I was working my way through the tree, and after about 30 days, I was kind of like, okay, I'm bored. I want something different. Okay? So I did something different. I started watching some movies and things like that or some TV series on YouTube. But then I couldn't understand anything, so I decided to come back to, let's try and figure out a different app that I can use. Okay. So Duolingo, obviously free, really good, but I needed something a little more, so I decided to try Babbel. Okay. So I had heard some good things about Babbel. I had heard that, instead of just dropping words on there and there's no context, it does give you some context, and it does give you some chances to respond. It does give you some spaced repetition so that you come back to the same material over time so it sticks better. And it has done that for me. I really enjoyed Babbel. It's worked well. There is opportunity for listening practice too. So so you can listen to an actual conversation in Spanish, and sometimes it does require you to respond or fill in a blank somewhere along that conversation. And then also it will ask you at the end of a conversation, what did you remember? And it'll ask you 2 or 3 questions about, okay, did this person like this or did they like this? And it's just getting you having to focus a little bit more on the actual language and how it sounds, how it's being, what's actually being said. Okay? So I've really enjoyed Babbel for that reason. Now, I still have some issues with Babbel because there's still not a ton of opportunity for response, right? There's no opportunity for engaging in a conversation and then going with the flow of that conversation. This is the problem with any language learning app. There's no artificial intelligence that's going to be able to have a conversation with you necessarily. It's just, it gives you something and then it might ask you questions and then you can respond. But there's no actual conversational skills being developed, in my opinion. Okay? Now, it does give you very real life situations that you might find yourself in, though. So that is a good thing about Babbel. It does give pretty close to real life situations where maybe you're going out to dinner, or maybe you have to order some dinner or something like that. It tells you how to do those things. And so for that reason, I think that Babbel's good, but it's still lacking something. Okay? Now, let's jump for just a second to Rosetta Stone. The reason I started trying Rosetta Stone is because my boss at work, I told my boss that I was wanting to learn Spanish. She said, okay, I have an old Rosetta Stone DVD or CD set, so I'll let you use that. Great, awesome. So I started listening and working through Rosetta Stone, and it was very similar to Babbel. I would say that it was kind of in between Duolingo and Babbel, meaning that Duolingo was very one word at a time kind of stuff, and Babbel was a little bit more longer sentence based and a little bit more conversational. I'd say Rosetta Stone was right there in the middle. And Rosetta Stone was the last thing that I tried, so it was. I felt like I was beating a dead horse a little bit by doing Rosetta Stone after doing Duolingo and doing Babbel. I was just getting too much of the same thing, so I was ready to kind of move on. So I felt like it was a kind of a balance between the two. Again, I don't think you're going to get conversationally fluent with Rosetta Stone. The way you're going to get conversationally fluent is by taking those things that you're learning from Babbel, Rosetta Stone, Duolingo, and going and having actual Spanish conversations, okay? And the way that I did that was that I started texting one of my Hispanic friends, just texting him, right? So just started texting him. I said, okay, I'm trying to learn Spanish. Talk to me in Spanish, okay? So, and that's what we've been doing. We've been talking in Spanish. Now, texting in Spanish, not actual talking. That's the hard part. That's the really hard part. So I would say, get Duolingo if you want to, just for getting some basic stuff. It's fun. Go through some of the stuff in the tree and just kind of get a feel for the language. I think that's fine. One of the things that Duolingo does have, it's not in the app itself, but they have a podcast. So go to your Apple store, go to your podcast store, whatever, and find the Duolingo Spanish podcast. That is great, comprehensible input, okay? So if you're looking for something that's conversational and you have to try and follow along, Duolingo does have that. And that's totally free. Just go and download some of the podcast episodes. It's real Spanish speaking conversations, okay? About real life situations. And they kind of interject in English every now and then to help you along the way. So that's one of the things that I really liked about Duolingo, is that they have this other branch of their Duolingo Spanish podcast. So love that. Okay, so again, I'm going to recommend that you do one of these things, and I think that for me, the best one I think is Babbel if you want to get that kind of baseline level of stuff, right? But then you've got to translate that into actual conversation. So find a Spanish speaking friend, or go get on one of these kind of meetup platforms such as HelloTalk or italki, and I'm going to compare those two in a future video. Get on one of those and start spending some time texting or text messaging or even voice messaging with a native Spanish speaker. Okay, because most of the time they want to learn English as well, so you can kind of exchange a little bit there. So anyway, getting off topic, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Duolingo, Babbel, Rosetta Stone. My recommendation at this point would be Babbel. You'll have to pay a little bit, but I think it's worth it to go ahead and do that. Okay, so that's all I got for today. I'll see you guys later. Adios.